sometimes it kicks us off and she has to go on Facebook. There it goes. She's good. Okay.
We're good?
Let's give it a second to make sure that it's not going to do the audio looping thing. So hold on just 1 second.
Doesn't sound like it is.
Okay, it's muted on there, so we're good.
Okay.
Okay. Let's call this meeting to order then of the Planning and Zoning Commission. We appreciate your patience. We had a meeting just now that went a little over. Let's call this meeting to order, as I said. First, we need to approve the minutes of the May 11th meeting. Can I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
John?
Do we need a roll call first for attendance?
Oh, we can. Deb?
Is a roll call necessary? I mean, we don't usually do that in any other meeting. So, I mean, is that a requirement for this particular commission?
No, Randy already took roll. We're good.
Okay, so we're good.
Okay.
Okay,
right.
excellent.
Especially since it's videoed.
All right, so I had a motion and a second on the minutes. Do I, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All
Now,
right.
let's go to the staff report, Jack.
We've got a lot of items on the agenda, so I'll move as quickly as possible. A couple of things, as you saw, you received a copy of the amended agenda. Items 8, 9, 10, and 11 were pulled by the applicant this afternoon with no specific time related to if and when they'll come back on. So those items are off the agenda. And we are going to we'll go through the agenda in the same order, just excluding those items. Second matter, we just received notice last week while I was out of the office that the Building Code Enforcement Group that surveyed us to see how well we enforced our building codes for purpose of the ISO rating on insurance. They completed that audit and they notified us of our new ratings. We were building code ratings of 5 in both residential and commercial. Coming into this audit, now we are a building code rating of 5 on the residential side, and we are now a 4 on the commercial side. So that actually helps for at least the next 4 years. Anybody that has a building permit under the new, since this rating system came into, or this rating came into effect, will have a better ISO rating for purposes of their insurance in the future.
And that's 4 and 5 out of how many?
Well, 1 is as good as you can be. 2, 3, 4, 5, and it goes up to I believe 8, and then it's 99. Basically meaning you're unrated. When I came here in 2007, we were still unrated. After the first evaluation in 2007, 8, something like that, right after I got here, we went to a 7, and we were evaluated again 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and we went to a 5 and a 5, and then this rating we're at a 5 and a 4. So we are now on the same level, and at least in commercial, on the enforcement strength with cities like Liberty and at least some much bigger cities with much larger budgets. So that's a good thing for us. And lastly, we are at 28 single-family homes. I know that'll be important for Mr. Chevalier next week. 28 single-family home permits. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Jack. We now move to a public hearing to discuss the single-phase final plat for Mitchell's Greenhouse and Nursery, Plat 2, a replat of Lot 1 to create 2 new lots, 3 total. Let's open that public hearing. If there's anyone here that wishes to speak for or against the matter, please state your name and address for the record, and you're limited to 3 minutes. Is there anyone here to speak to this matter? Okay, seeing none, then we will close the public hearing. And do I hear a motion to approve the single phase final plat of Mitchell's Greenhouse and Nursery, etc. Can I
So
have such a
moved.
motion?
So moved.
Carmen, was that Carmen? Yes, it was.
That was
Yes.
Carmen. Is there a second?
Second.
Deb seconded it. Okay. Now, we have, let's see here. We have a finding of fact from staff regarding this. Let's open this matter for discussion. Anything to discuss here? If not, can I have a motion to approve the proposed findings of fact?
I think you already have that on the
Yep.
table.
Did I have that on the table?
Yep,
Okay, I'm
so
sorry.
I'll just call for
Okay.
a roll call.
Well,
Go ahead.
Hang on one second. Hang on.
Okay.
Hey,
Amy?
Jack, could you just give a quick overview of what's in the packet, just so?
Sure,
so we can
sure.
check
If there are
with-
any, yeah.
Good
This is
idea.
a request to divide the Mitchell Greenhouse subdivision, which was created 2 years ago, I believe it was, with 2 lots with the conceptual plan overlay on it so that they would be able to have a commercial subdivision with lots on it without all of them having direct front access to a public street. They have one entrance that comes in and a cross access agreement for full features, which has been down there for some time. And currently on lot 1, you have SMA, the medical marijuana dispensary. And now they are wanting to do what was approved last year on the site plan process for attic storage. They want to start doing some of those buildings. They need to separate the interest. So this will allow them to separate the medical marijuana facility and put a separate lot for the attic storage, and then a third lot for future development in the, what would be the south and the west corner. So it'd be 3 subdivisions. They have internal drive access points, so there are no public streets. And this will allow them to divide that current lot number 1 into 3 separate lots.
Thank you, Jack.
Sure.
Any questions from the commission for Jack on this one?
Appreciate that, Damian. Let's go ahead and have a vote then. Brandy?
Okay. All right, Deb,
Aye.
Mayor Boley,
Aye.
Alderman Chevalier,
Aye.
Carmen,
Aye.
and Rand.
Aye.
5-0.
Okay. Before we move to the next public hearing,
1 second, Rand. So Jack
Yeah.
is on our agenda next week.
Yes, it will be on the Board of Aldermen's agenda at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
okay. So before we move to the next public hearing, which concerns the single phase final plat Kylie Acres to create an additional lot, 2 lots. Could you fill us in on this, Jack, before we open the public hearing?
Yes, the application, and I will have to defer to Brandy on the one issue, if she'd made contact with the applicant based upon some requirements we had as of last week. Did you ever hear back from the applicant?
No,
And I don't see the applicant's name on the meeting. We had indicated to the applicant that if they did not complete a couple of technical matters to make our file complete, that we would pull this from the agenda until such time as they could do that. We have not heard anything. And they are not here on the meeting. So Kylie Acres at this point, it's a really basic, simple, they want to take 10 acres off the front of their property and they have a 63-acre tract to divide it for someone else. But since they didn't complete those tasks, this was one that I intended to pull from the agenda, but didn't. And I don't believe there's anyone here that wants to speak. I would suggest that we open this public hearing to see if anyone wants to speak for or against it. I'm assuming no one's here, and if so, then we just close the public hearing, but we do not move forward with the actual vote or motion until they comply with our request.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
makes perfect sense. Let's open the public hearing on this matter. Is there anyone here to speak for or against this matter? Seeing none, let's close the public hearing and move to the next item on the agenda, which deals with the medical marijuana facility site plan review. Jack, you want to take that away?
Yes, this is one of our many administrative function ideas that we were talking about earlier. So in this scenario, there is a list of different standards that need to be met. And in our specific code section for site plan, there are latitudes given to either the Planning Commission or the Board of Aldermen in various circumstances. In my staff report on this one, I've identified those areas where in staff's recommendation, it would behoove us to make slight variations as it relates to those things. The most important thing for you all to recognize, and I see that Mr. Hartman is on, he was involved with the other application that came in to this industrial subdivision some time ago for the, if you recall, the CDL school. We were, I was in error with them and required them to meet the standards related to the B3 district, which is substantially more stringent than the I1 district. They've been notified on that one. So, and I put all this in my staff report so you'd understand it from that perspective. There are certain levels of things that need to occur. In this one, there were 2 areas where they requested a slight variance. Number one being that they wanted the pitch of the roof. This is a massively large building. So they wanted the pitch of the roof, instead of being a 312 pitch, which basically changes how steep it is, and in a building that's 200 feet wide, how tall it is. They wanted to be able to reduce that to a 212 pitch without having to put up a parapet wall. So if it's below 3, you're supposed to put up a parapet wall around the building. Well, that would have been about a 13-foot, I believe, parapet wall to hide that, to make it look like it's a flat roof building. And the additional expense and the visual nature of what that would look like made it very difficult to from staff perspective to warrant standing on that requirement, simply because of the aesthetics of where this is. If this building was 60 foot wide and you were talking a 312 versus 212 pitch and what that would do to a parapet, it's one thing, but you're talking about a building that's hundreds of feet wide, 82,000 square feet. So it would make, a 212 versus a 112 pitch in a 200 plus foot long building, it's real tall. And it serves no purpose other than the aesthetic requirement of it. So we've suggested that you consider that variance. And then the other one is more of an open question in that the code says that the HVAC units on a building should be appropriately screened from view. Once again, in this case, we've got a building, I believe it's about 600 feet long, with the shorter side faced from the road, in an industrial park, half of which on the one side where the bulk of these units are, it's going to be up against another industrial building. So it's not going to be, and it's a large lot, so you're not going to have much visual nature of it. Staff suggests that we ought to consider allowing that buffer to shield it from view from the public street that's available, which is the one right as you pull up in front of it. Because the nature of this type of business, I think there are 9, and I'll let the applicant talk about that separately. I think there are 9 giant HVAC units just on one side, spaced 20, 30, 40 feet apart. So shielding them would basically, and they're tall, so shielding them would basically be a very large fence or shielding area all the way down 600 feet of this building versus protecting the view of the public. It's not crystal clear what the code means, and it's in the staff report what the code says. So those are the 2 items. In all other respects, The application meets our engineers' concerns on the stormwater design, which is one of the items we needed to take care of. And all of their buffering as it relates to the public infrastructure in front will occur. This particular project has substantial security requirements by the state. So some of their buffering and landscaping requirements will be inside their fence, and some of it will likely be just outside their fence. So it's a mishmash of what it's going to look like. But ultimately, they've got plenty of trees, shrubs, etc., to take care of that buffering. The numbers are actually exceed slightly what the code would require. So staff's recommendation as associated with that is that they do meet the standards, giving you the two options or the two items that we recommend you change.
Jack, I've got a question.
Sure.
Regarding their landscape and their trees, is it possible for us to request that they not plant invasive species like
The-
Callery pears and things like that?
Yes, and that's part of the code. They've laid it out in their landscape plan, what kind of trees they are. So yeah, they're good. Yeah, the pears, the any of that other stuff, yeah, they've got basic Midwestern landscape trees. So
I was gonna say, well, people are using the Callery pears in the Midwest now. The reason I bring it up is the Missouri Department of Conservation is spending a lot of money to mitigate the damage that the invasives have done. The autumn olives, the Callery pears, the honeysuckle, things like that. And it's out of control right now. I just didn't think we needed to add to it.
yeah, and ultimately, Deb, I think that would be something that would be good if you could provide me with a link to some of that stuff. We
I'll
could,
do that. I will do that.
We could suggest some Department of Natural Resources additional information associated with it.
Yeah, the Missouri Department of Conservation would be the ones that they would need to talk to get approval on trees.
Yeah, we can get that stuff together for all future applications.
Great, I will send you links to that stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
And Mr. Chairman, I do see that there's at least one, if not two, of the applicant folks that are available here. Mr. Hoffman and Mr. Anderson are both with the applicants. So if they would like to make a presentation related to the issues that we discussed in the staff report, or they have any other things they'd like to discuss with you, they're here. And if you have any questions of the applicant or the engineer on this, they are certainly here for those questions.
And if you have a presentation, Mr. Hoffman or Mr. Anderson, we're happy to yield the floor to you.
Defer to DJ and Mr. Anderson.
Sure. Yeah, this is Tyler Anderson. I'm with Olson Associates. We are the civil engineer on the project, as well as representing the landscape architect. In reference to those questions on the screening, we have provided a landscaping plan as well with our submittal. That will be signed by a licensed landscape architect. And yeah, we definitely stay away from any trees that would be kind of harmful to the area as far as invasive species. And speaking to the screening and the HVAC requirement, we made a large attempt to screen from the public view of the street with that landscaping between grading on the site, as well as where we spaced our landscaping, the mature size of those, that landscape architecture throughout the site. And the front portion of the building is used for offices. So the large HVAC units do not really begin until you get to the rear half of the building. And to the north, you have the stormwater detention tract, and to the south is kind of the rear portion of that larger lot, as well as some unplatted area. So yeah, any questions on that site layout, I'd be happy to address.
Any questions from the commission? Okay. At this point, then, Jack, what action do we need to take here?
It's simply as it relates to the staff report that you have before you already, and the recommendations in it, that you approve the staff report and recommend approval to the Board of Aldermen. If you do that, it would go to the board next week as a resolution.
Okay. Do we need to make a motion then to do that, John?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the site plan with staff's recommendations.
We have a second.
Second,
Okay. You have that, Brandy?
Yep, I do.
Good. All right, so that will come to
We'll
us
do a roll
next
call
month.
vote. So let's see here. Mayor Boley,
Aye.
Deb,
Aye.
Rand,
Aye.
Carmen,
aye.
Alderman Chevalier.
Aye.
5-0.
Okay. At this point, let's move to the next item on the agenda. Would you speak to that point of the agenda, Jack?
Yes, sir, I certainly will. And I've been fidgeting with my computer while I talk to try and be able to pull this up on my screen. I can't get it to work, so I apologize. I'm not certain how bad I'm breaking this, but ultimately, this project, it was previously approved 3 years ago, I believe, for the KCI RV Center, with a total of 6 buildings up on the top of the hill there, south of Commercial and 169 intersection on the west side of the road. 2 of those buildings are already in. The third building is under construction. Those are the 3 on the south side of the building. The north side of the project would be 3 more, it was approved for 3 more buildings, with the site plan recommendation at that time that when they build those 3 buildings, when they start building those first 3 buildings, they would then have to extend Commercial Street to the end of their property. And that would become the new entrance. So that's the way it's sat. What they've suggested now is a slight difference in that they want to remove one of those buildings off of the front side, meaning the 169 side, and convert that building to a future office building related to the site. So it would have the ability to have a restroom, showers, and the offices for the rest of the change, which would be specifically the RV camping area that you see on the site plan. 25 spots on the south side that would be full hookup, water, sewer, electric, etc., with buffering in place with landscaping, and then do the same on the north side in the future. Same thing, but it would be 23 spaces on the north side, and they would put a 3,000 square foot office building in that would have to meet the same aesthetic look as of every other building there. So you already know what those are. You've already approved those. And ultimately, that's the significance of this change. They've got one building going from about 38,000 square feet, removing it and making a 3,000 square foot building. Just so you understand how this aspect of it works, the site plan from the road will change in that the original distance and buffering as it relates to the landscaping will change with the addition of the parking spaces for the campers. And they're adding the trees that grow very fast along the eastern edge of this camping area. So it will actually increase the amount of buffer from the road that you see of the site. And that's on the south side. The north side would be required to do the same thing when it came in, same kind of buffering. The only other item is a open storage area that's on the back side or the far west side of the lot. And you can see that area back there. That would be a gravel parking area for parking RVs, storing them, but just outside instead of inside the climate controlled buildings that they have. That is already allowed in the district, same with the camping, so there's no zoning issue. The only requirement is if you have outdoor storage of these parking or these RVs, you have to have a 80% site obscurity buffer around it. That would have to go in with that as that fence went up. It would go in at that time. Don't know when the scheduling is. He's got phasing he's working on how that'll happen, and that's kind of subject to the market. But so related to it, they are taking out one giant building, putting in a smaller building. The building will look same color material as the rest. If they make a change and want to make a change to that building in the future, they understand they'd have to come back to the commission to address what the building would look like at that time if they want to make a slightly different change. But as you may recall, when we originally brought this through, their original submittal was for 9 buildings. It changed to 6 longer buildings. And now they want to go to 5 buildings with a future smaller building. Everything they've submitted meets the application standards. And it's primarily related to one building going from 38,000 feet to 3,000 feet. If you have any other questions, I can let you talk to the applicant or his engineers on here as well.
I think we have a motion, need a motion first, right, Jack, before you can open up for discussion.
Sure.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Who's going to second it?
Second.
Thank you. Hey, so Jack, one quick question. When we first approved this, it was, there's a lot of questions on the traffic, and now we're talking about short-term RV rentals. What's there, first pad rentals instead of bringing them in for storage. Does that have to be reevaluated now as well?
The application or the traffic evaluation that was done by MoDOT originally, I think addressed all of those things. I would want to clarify, and I think it would be best to have the owner talk about how he intends to use that area from the standpoint of whether it's rental or if it's something different. And I know Steve Kerwin is
Still in a
on.
meeting.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just wanted to call to apologize. I feel really.
I'm going to mute Carmen.
I'm sorry.
Carmen, you aren't on mute. Please go on mute when you get phone calls.
Steve, are you
I
available?
know that. Thank you so much for reminding me.
Yes,
Am I
I'm
to
on.
pardon me?
Steve Kerwin's on, yes.
Okay. Yeah, Steve, did you understand the mayor's question as related to the camping spaces?
As of now, there'd be 25 spots there on the south side of the new driveway. And that would be to the public with reservations only. The gate would be on the outside of the entrance, just like it is now. I don't know what other kind of questions you're talking about.
I
Okay.
have one. Is there a time limit for these reservations? 1 week, 2 weeks, month?
Month, but I'm not going to have a place where people live there year round. No.
Okay,
Absolutely.
that was my.
I want to make it a nice facility, just like the one there at Worlds of Fun.
Oh, all right.
How would you regulate to make sure that it wasn't a long-term rental?
Well,
facility?
number one, you don't let them put skirting around a camper. They got to be ready to move out at the blink of an eye. You just can't let somebody, what you call homestead there. I'm not going to have that. If that's what you mean.
Now, I noticed at Worlds of Fun, the landscaping is beautiful. Will yours be on that order?
Absolutely. I want to have green giants. That's a tree that grows really, really fast so that you won't even be able to see the campers in a few years from the highway. You'll see the top of the roof of the buildings, yes.
So my question was more to the traffic aspect of this. There was a lot of concerns from the public when we approved this, that the traffic off of 169 going into that single entrance. I'd prefer to see this done when commercial was done, as we just talked, the medical marijuana facility is going to be coming on there as well. We have other commercial development, industrial development going in the same zone. We're going to add more traffic to an already busy intersection.
And Mr. Mayor, as it relates to that, my recollection from the MoDOT approval several years ago anticipated RV traffic going in and coming out of up to 6 buildings with all of the storage that we're talking about. And taking out one of these 600-foot long buildings and putting in the camper store or the camper area, I think is within the same realm of what they were talking about.
So how many campers does one building hold?
As I recall, it's like
Currently, there's 70 bays there, 70 campers.
In each building?
No.
in
In
two
two
buildings.
buildings, there's 70 bays now. At the end of the third building, there'll be 101.
So there's 35 bays per building. So you're taking out 35 bays and replacing it with 23. 25.
Yeah.
Sorry. So you're taking out,
25 on phase, yep, on phase 1.
but we're talking the difference between storing and using them as a camper. I see the traffic at the lake, the lake on the weekends is different than people storing them. So,
Yeah.
Just asking.
Yeah. I don't see a problem.
Jack, did I hear you mention Commercial Avenue? Or
Yes.
was it- And could you repeat?
Yes, when they move forward with any building on the north half, they had 3 buildings, which were going to be, 589 feet long by various widths. They've taken it, they're asking to take out one of those buildings in the future, put a 3,000 square foot building in on it for the restrooms, et cetera, of the camping area. And the people coming in to do their long-term storage of their RVs. When they build anything north of that existing entrance as it comes in, they would then have to build commercial all the way across to the backside of their property and put in entrances off of commercial to this site through that area as well. So then there would be 2 full entrances. So before the new stuff happens on the north, there will be 2 entrances. One of them goes to commercial, one of them goes to the control or the open intersection that they created with MoDOT. It's got a northbound right turn lane, a left turn lane already installed. There is no right turn lane identified through either aspect of MoDOT.
No, would that increase the traffic flow on commercial theoretically?
Well, to the extent it would be a completely new street, yes. It's
Okay.
commercial over there is 200 foot long. It serves 2 buildings and the KCP&L stuff, and it comes to a stoplight. So
Okay, thank you.
that
I'm clear
stoplight in
now.
commercial was already in place.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
I mean, it's still, I'm still kind of hung up on the rental aspect of it. I'm curious, Jack, is there some way we can get more assurance on what those rentals are going to look like, term durations, things like that? And
Ultimately, it is authorized by right in the B3 district. So there's no zoning issue where we have a lot more flexibility. Where we do have some administrative authority here is related to getting rid of the 38,000 square foot building and making it a 3,000 square foot building to match everything else being the same. So that's the real focus here is what it is. We have all the other traffic protections and the road improvement protections already in place. So as it relates to the zoning issue, I don't know that short of coming back, and it would have to be later to change our zoning ordinance as to what kind of RV parks are allowed in the general business district. Yeah, that would have to be something we would have to review through a zoning ordinance change.
I have known and do know people who are traveling nurses, basically traveling professionals, from engineering to nursing to any number of professional activities. And oftentimes they will come in a motorhome or a fifth wheel or something like that. And they struggle to find a place where they can stay for anywhere from a few days to maybe a month or two while they finish working on a project. And something like this, close to the highway where they could hang their hat, so to speak, and then go do their job or their project or whatever they're doing, this would probably work out very nicely for them. This is not the same thing as, say, Smith's Fork or any of the other recreational types. I mean, it could be, I guess, a recreational area, but this area seems to lend itself more to the traveling professional that does not want to stay in a hotel for a month or two at a time. So that was one of the reasons I asked about that, what the length of time would be.
That's exactly the market we're going for, yes.
I would say my cousin's husband used to travel around and inspect nuclear reactor facilities for power plants, things like that. He would go out and tell them, no, we're not going to blow up the universe here. Let's fix this, that kind of thing. So that would be the kind of place that you're talking about that he would be wanting to stay.
And if I may, Alderman Chevalier, to clarify, if it became apparent that this had converted into a a permanent residence scenario, I think that would allow us the ability to look at it from a slightly different perspective at that point, which would then mean they'd have to have a mobile home or a district. And so they'd be in violation of the zoning. This is a RV park. It's not an RV, where you like Mr. Kerwin mentioned, sometimes you see them come in and they put skirting up and they start doing they're setting down their roots. If we notice that from our perspective, I think that would probably warrant a notice of zoning violation related to the wrong district.
Okay, yeah, that's essentially what I was getting at, right? I mean, I wanted to be able to have some sort of enforcement action, not only to help the applicant out, but help the city out if we ever ran into something like that.
Sure. And ultimately that I think is inherent in the RV park versus, it's not a place where you go to live. I think the definitions in the R1M district would probably address that pretty well.
Well, there's a difference between an RV park and a mobile home park.
Sure. And to the extent that folks camp out there for a year and set up skirting and all that, you sell this in the future and that's what it becomes. That's how we would likely enforce on the new owner.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions for anyone? Okay, then we need to go to a vote. Randy?
All right, Alderman Chevalier,
Aye.
Carmen,
We didn't hear you, Carmen.
I know.
Okay.
I'm old. Aye.
Deb,
I,
Mayor Boley,
Aye.
and Rand,
Aye.
5-0.
This will be on the Board of Aldermen agenda next week. As we discussed at the other one, it'll be in form of resolution. Same thing, all the same things apply. We'd ask that the applicant come on that meeting too.
Okay. Next, we have on the agenda the Herzog Foundation Site Plan Amendment. If you would recap that briefly, Jack, we would appreciate it.
Sure. This item is up on 188th Street in Maine. You have had an opportunity to read the staff report. The buildings the materials, the buffering, the landscaping, all those items are in compliance with the code. The only remaining issue is related to the condition that staff has put on the item. It's the second half of the, and I would ask, I finally figured out why I couldn't figure this out, Brandy. Can you open the ability for me to share my screen? That may allow me to help out some of this stuff. Whoops. Sorry. So,
Did that work?
yeah, it's here. I'm just trying to click on the right document to open it. Okay, so you have before you, what you see now is the staff report document. And the items below the condition, you can see my cursor over here. We recommend approval conditioned upon the Main Street improvements. Those Main Street improvements are identified in the paragraph on the right. And that is the only real issue I think that's outstanding. There are several members of the applicant that would like to address that issue with you here. So ultimately, as it relates to the timing, when all that happened, how all this occurred, I'll leave it up to the applicant to discuss it. And they can express their issues, concerns, or whatever, and then go from there. As we did in the previous site plan, it happens to the KCIRV folks, we did a similar thing. When they reached a certain point in their development, they had to make the road improvements. And that's what basically this is. Difference is this is an existing road that is substandard. So they will be required to upgrade Main Street on their 314-foot east boundary with curb gutter sidewalk on their side and then the asphalt on the rest. That's the staff's recommendation to you.
So Jack,
So I'd leave it to, I don't really have much else to identify with. We can open it to questions from the commissioners, or we can send it to the applicant's representatives. Several of them are here.
I think first we need a motion to approve the agenda item.
Okay, good point.
Let's have an motion then to approve the site plan amendment. Who can put forth that motion?
I'll move to approve the Herzog Foundation site plan amendment for the cabins.
Second. Who's going to second? I'll second it.
I thought that there was supposed to be discussion first.
Well, we have to make the motion before we have the discussion. So we need
Thank you.
We can have the discussion now.
No,
Okay.
that's okay.
Yeah, I'll second it, Rand.
Okay.
Thank
And I
you.
already seconded it, actually.
Now the discussion can open.
Good. Now, at this point, is there someone from Herzog that would like to speak?
Hi, yeah, this is Kevin Weininger. I can say a few words, and we also have, I'm from Gastinger Walker, the architecture firm. Anthony Luca is an associate with our office. Dirk Talley with Show Me Real Estate is representing the owner, and Jacob Hawkins is with the foundation. He's executive director. So I can say a few words, and Dirk or Anthony or Jake, if you want to chime in, that's fine or good. But you know, I'm sure, as you're all aware, the building is currently under construction. The foundation, which I think, as you know, is a mission-driven nonprofit to support Christian K-12 education, they're very excited to start their work. And the main building, right, of course, if you remember from the previous planning commission submittal about, I don't know, 10 months ago, was for the office building and had included, you know, some language that a phase 2 for these cabins would be coming down the line, but at the time was not fully understood from a design standpoint what that was going to entail. The and so the intent for the cabins, which, go on the eastern half of the 8 acres towards Main Street, is to allow the foundation's guests, some of which will be staying potentially for multiple days, to have a place to stay on the site, because they might be doing a type of work where they're working, all day and with the foundation at the office building, and can then be able to stay on site, have a nice place to stay, and it creates just a general experience for the visitors, and I think also will provide a great amenity for the foundation, to attract some very interesting, well-known people, most likely to come visit, bring some attention to Smithville and Northwest Missouri, as I know their plan is to do. And so that's kind of the little bit of the overview. You can see the cabins to the right hand there. So there's four buildings, each with 2 cabins each. They set in the kind of existing wooded area. We're adding a parking lot specifically for the cabins, that's in addition to the previously approved parking lot with the main building. The parking lot has an entrance and exit onto Main Street, 188. And as you know, the foundation is already spending about $400,000 to improve 188th Street and upgrade it to a new roadway, sewers, and sidewalks and curbs. That's actually going to turn the corner for, I think, 30-40 feet onto Main. And so that's already approved and under contract with the current builder on site. A part of the original development plan had listed that as long as we were to make no entrance or exit onto Main Street with the future improvements with the cabins, which were known at the time to the city, no improvements would be required on Main Street. So I think we developed the design and that to follow that language that was already agreed to. And we're a bit surprised, as I'm sure you've, as kind of Jack stated, that the staff report came out with the conditions that it has. And the foundation's not going to agree to it. So I think we're kind of at a bit of a, just want to have a conversation. I think from our end, from a design standpoint, we would like to know if there are any existing master plans available for future growth on Main Street. What's the long-term plan for the development of Main Street? I think that might help provide us some perspective on or a master plan and/or a existing ordinance or zoning requirements that state something about street upgrades, because I think we're kind of looking for some help here to understand some of the background behind the staff report.
In 1 second, too. Thanks, Kevin, for that overview. Rand, do we have any public comment before we move forward with any other board discussion?
Is there any public comment? We haven't opened a hearing and so on. But
It's not a hearing. It's an agenda item. So if there's somebody here for public comment on this, we need to make sure they get their 3 minutes.
Yeah. Good point. Is there anyone here for that?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand what you said. I do have comments, but I'm not sure it's my turn.
Go ahead. If you're the public and you're here and you'd like to comment, go ahead.
My name is Trudy, Trudy, LaForce, LA, capital FORCE. I live at 411 Northeast 188th Street, Smithville. And my property is across North Main to the east of the Herzog property. And I don't recall, especially when they first came to rezone that area, that there was any mention of cabins or people spending or staying overnight on that property, or building anything in the wooded area. If they do, if this is approved and they have a parking area, is that going to be paved? And also, this neighborhood continues to have the natural foliage that helps filter water runoff removed, as well as the foliage that served as windbreaks. If this plan is improved, will North Main be moved to the west where it should be? Where will storm sewer water go when it leaves this property? Will the change affect the road as far as how the large farming equipment can use that road, as several do? All the water runoff from this property, and I know they've made improvements along 188th Street, but all of that water eventually runs down North Main on the Herzog property and then under the road onto my property. So I do have concerns about this, and I appreciate any information you can give me.
Jack, can you speak to any of that?
I sure can. The original application, when they submitted the stormwater work on it, captured all of the stormwater in accordance with city code. We asked them to make sure that this was updated for it. They had over-designed it in the initial one. They have submitted a report, and our engineers have approved that report that indicates all of the stormwater will be detained on site in accordance with the minimum standards of the current APWA standards as it relates to that. So they are currently constructing that. That's already under construction as a part of the original project. So the city isn't concerned about that stormwater from the engineering standpoint. So I can address at least the stormwater stuff.
Yeah,
that helps.
I can address your questions about landscaping and the trees. There will be very few trees removed. The intent is to leave it as much as possible exactly as it is now and add additional plantings to further help with erosion and absorption. The parking lot, Anthony, is paved or gravel?
It's paved.
Paved.
The parking lot would be paved.
Yeah. Yeah, and the lighting is all, there is some site, it's all very dim. And I think the intent is to really not even be able to see these buildings from the street. In the winter, you will, obviously, when the leaves are gone, but when the foliage is there, I think you'll be able to drive by and never know they're there.
Well, actually, according to the drawings that I was sent or that I found online, they really don't even look like cabins. And also, there've already been a lot of brush and trees removed from the very beginning of the work on the property. So it's not as dense. And now I understand that's probably to make room for these cabins. So I still have concerns. And if the improvements are made on North Main, again, it's the storm sewer along North Main. If it flows to the south, and that's where it goes under the road to my property. So what will happen when it gets at the end of the storm sewer on the Herzog property along North Main?
Well, I think we have some of the same questions, Trudy, about the purpose behind this Main Street improvement, and if there's a larger master plan so that we aren't building a street that creates other unintended issues just to have a new section of street. So I think we have similar concerns in terms of how that street is draining underneath your property. Sympathize very much with you. And I think is probably what we're sort of suggesting is that we don't really have a good idea of why this is being requested or what the larger plan is for Main Street that would tell us for future utility improvements, future bike paths, future sidewalks. What's the city want? What's the city's plan?
Okay, that still doesn't address the fact that now they're wanting to have a facility for people to stay overnight on that property, where originally I didn't see anything that said anyone would be staying overnight on any of that property.
Well, it's in the final approval of the documents, so I think we can go back. And that's publicly available, I'm sure. And the use is allowed by the zoning on the site. But
Yeah,
Jack, is that
Kevin is
original
100%
drawing?
correct. The zoning absolutely allows this use without any zoning discussion, really. It's more of a improvement.
Jack,
Deb?
is that the original drawing from last year?
Yes, that's from the zoning when the development agreement was submitted. This is the documentation that was provided to the
Right.
city at that time.
I actually do remember the discussion of the cabins at the time, that they would be coming forth in a future meeting. But there was discussion at that meeting that there would be,
That was the site plan.
yeah,
That was the first phase site plan. That was 4 or 5 months later from when the original improvements.
yeah.
The original staff position on this project in March, April, and May of 2020 was that 188th Street and Main Street get the same treatment. But because there was no development, as you can see on this map here, because there was no development east of that creek, that they wouldn't have to do any street improvements on Main Street, with one caveat, because we hadn't even done a traffic study yet. Their intent was 274 feet from 169 to have the entrance to the foundation. No one knew at the time whether or not there would be a requirement of having a secondary access for something related to the fire code. We weren't certain on that. So we indicated, if you've got to take a secondary access off and it goes off then into Main Street, you got to redo Main Street at that point in time. But now in September, that's the first we saw of the cabins. And they were kind of shadowed in on all the plans. But it wasn't part of our initial discussion. And it was still conceptual. The plans they submitted in September don't look like what they're submitting now. They changed it a little bit, tweaked it around. And we didn't have anything on the buildings or lighting or parking or any of that. It was just kind of they're looking at the buildings there. So,
And Jack, weren't those shaded in boxes closer there to the Catholic Church's parking lot, not near Main Street?
oh, no. In September, they were over on the Main Street side.
Oh, okay.
And that's why we made it clear that's a secondary staff report or site plan application. It's a second phase because we don't have enough to even decide that, to even evaluate it from a staff perspective. Nothing to even get to the commission on. So,
And that came in after we approved the initial plat site plan.
yeah,
That
the initial improvements for 188th Street were approved in May of 2020. Yes, May of 2020. And there was a development agreement and all that associated with the plat in the green area. You can see it was rezoned because it was part single family and part B3. The zoning was changed to make the whole thing B2. And then they platted it so they could divide it from the Catholic Church. Same concept being they divide that lot off, created their own plat. And ordinarily, as I indicated, on something of this size, if this, and in this area, we would require street improvements on both Main and 188th. But, and we had conversations at that time with the applicant related to the Main Street improvements. And obviously we had no idea that there was cabins in the future.
So Kevin, you mentioned that we knew about this all along, but I don't see that in the packet from May, nor do I see any documents dated prior to that May meeting that show cabins on this site.
Jack's not incorrect about that. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So it was brought in later after we approved it. Staff didn't have all the document or all the information on what the site was fully going to look like developed, and the development agreement was agreed to based on a 17,000 square foot building, which is what you're building today, right?
It was also agreed upon that if there was no entrance or exit onto
with
Main
the
Street, and we had
with the 17,000 square foot building, though, there was no mention of cabins or additional auxiliary buildings or any other facilities on the property, correct?
Except that when we started the design on the project here, we reached out to the city to let them know of our plans and said there's a development agreement that states, once the cabin plans were being developed, the development agreement states, if there's no entrance or exit out onto Main Street, no street improvements will be requested. The answer was that's correct. That's how we proceeded. That we set our budgets for construction based on that understanding, our schedules. So I think there was maybe some miscommunication. So I think we just caught us a little bit by surprise.
Do we have any documentation of when that was sent, email or phone call or text or anything?
We can go back and look.
Okay. Because I mean, if we led you in one direction, that's one thing, but if the direction was never given, that's another thing.
Jack, do you mind? This is Dirk. Do you mind if I step in just real briefly?
Yeah, go for it.
I mean, I'm just throwing this out only because I think Dan sitting here, he's listening to the meeting. Is there the off chance that Public Works Department looked at this print and viewed it as though there was going to be an entrance on Main Street, when in fact there is not? I mean, if you look at those prints, and I say that because I think Dan was a little bit confused when he was reading it, and he said perhaps Cynthia Wagner, again, maybe this is just an oversight by Public Works from the start.
Was this our Public Works or is this our city engineer as well looking at this?
To be quite frank, in this one, it was Public Works. We don't send the site plan design concepts to our engineers. We do those in-house. They do the stormwater and traffic analysis stuff. So yeah, like I said, the first we saw of it, the first I saw of any cabin mention was in mid to late August when I got the very first submittal as it related to the foundation building. And it showed up inside the traffic study that was conducted in a plat document or a reference document in there showing those cabins. But to be quite frank, the traffic study specifically said that it was related to a 17,000 square foot building, and there was no mention in that document of any cabins in the traffic study.
Yeah, and Dirk, I can see what you're talking about, how it kind of looks like the parking lot does kind of go there to the east a little bit. So yeah.
But ultimately, I can explain clearly whenever we got it, the application for this aspect of it. It's a large full format document sitting over here on a table next to me. Chuck Souls and I started looking at it. And at that point in time, we had full understanding. It went out onto 188th Street. But we both understood that that was completely different than what we understood was coming as it related to the street improvements. Once we saw the full nature of it, Chuck's position was immediately, well, this definitely triggers Main Street side. Because here's what I will tell you, the staff recommendation to remove Main Street from the original development agreement in May, if we had a full understanding this development would have occurred this way, we wouldn't have come off of that. That would have been a requirement because it's in the code as it relates to development. When you do those things, you do them all at that time. We wouldn't have changed that, maybe phased it, but we had no concept that this was coming. So once it came, that was why we changed things.
That was one question we had. So is there something in the development code that does state that, or provide some parameters?
Yes, and it's in the subdivision code actually, and we can look through that.
That would be, we can find it.
Yeah,
that's good. That was kind of part of our original question. I mean, just trying to find some documentation on the process here.
Yeah, and I know Eric was just on the drop, but one of the items that we dropped off the agenda today was subdivisions that he was looking at doing, and those require sidewalks and all sorts of things, and sewer upgrades and transportation, and one of the things he found out today from his traffic study was lighted intersections. So
signalized.
Yeah, signalized intersection, but all of those developments usually come in with all the phases listed on the plat, not adding phases after something's approved. So, I get it if something gets added in later that it happens, but anyway, I'll let the other.
Yeah, and ultimately, like I said, we would have been able to, if we would have known this up front, we would have certainly been willing to work with a phasing program as it relates to when things come into, when the triggers are, what the triggers are associated with the offsite and the adjacent road improvements. We just didn't know that. And then in August, when we got the stuff, it was, oh boy, we don't even have enough to do the site plan stuff. So we can't even take it to the commission yet because we can't make a recommendation on phase 2 because we don't even have the concepts weren't even solid on your end. So
I guess it's good to hear the history from your side. I mean, and you're right, Jake. I mean, that is the history of when you received the specific location of the cabins in August. But I think nonetheless, and I think we wanted to make sure Planning Commission is aware of the foundation's position. They're still not in agreement, mainly because of, I think that this is 4 tiny buildings being added to a development. It's not going to add any foot traffic. It's not going to add any pressure on the main street. There's no one staying in these cabins that's going to venture onto Main Street or travel on the Main Street. So I think there's some pragmatic sort of, again, just part of the surprise of why such a small addition would trigger such a large cost. And I mean, I fully understand because we do a lot of residential development, sidewalks and street lights for a 260 unit development. But this is something it's not that. And I speaking for the foundation, I think, if the condition remains, they're not going to get built. So it'll probably just not happen.
Any other questions from the rest of the commission?
Yeah, if for some reason these cabins did happen, restriction was lifted, I mean, what's next? I mean, what else? Is there anything else out there that is going to happen that we don't know about today?
Not within city limits.
Okay. All right, let's go to a vote. Randy.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Carmen.
Of Jack. I have a sense that there is a need for conflict resolution here before I vote on this.
I agree.
I'm picking up it's tension, and all due respect to you, sir, Kevin. I understand your position, and I also understand Jack's. I would just feel a little more comfortable if we just kind of tabled this, Mr. Mayor, even if that's not possible, where everybody is on the same page. And, it's a wonderful thing that the foundation has a 501 status and that they're looking to, contain their budget. So I don't know, that's just my feeling. I will do my duty in terms of its propriety as far as our guidelines that we've talked about here recently. But I also want a good feeling that both parties, both the city and the applicant, are doing what's best for the city, for everyone involved. I would like Kevin to smile a little bit more. Truly, sir. Am I wrong here? I mean,
let me clarify a couple of things. You are perfectly within your purview to request that this matter be tabled until the conditions can be resolved to the satisfaction of the city and the developer. That's a perfectly acceptable scenario. It would have to be a motion to table, it's second, and then it goes through the vote. Or it can be approved with the conditions as they are, or it can be denied completely. All of the options are available. As I said, staff's recommendation is that we add the street improvements now, since we weren't aware of them at the time that we had the development agreement going. So you can do however you want. Kick
well,
it to the
I
board.
certainly wouldn't do that without the input from our mayor, who is our titular head. I'd like to hear what he has to say about it.
So Rand is the chair of this commission, but you know, I agree with your assessment. It's either we table it, or it's a no, yes, no vote on this one. If you want to, have it go back to staff, it's either a table or no vote to get staff to go work on it. So
if we table it, what are our alternatives?
Well, if you table it, the alternative, there isn't really an alternative. Table it and request that it come back with an agreement on the matter of some kind.
Yeah.
And that would basically put it on the next agenda in July, and hopefully in the next 30 days.
Well, table's indefinite, right? Jack postponed his next meeting.
Yes. Table it would put it until there is one, and then we could certainly put it back on. The benefit of this type of project being an administrative function scenario is that we do not have to go to a public hearing. Although we allow public comment, we don't have to go to sending out the 185 feet notices and all that other stuff. So as soon as we have a resolution that the applicant agrees with and the city staff agree with, we'd put it back on the planning commission. Or you can postpone, like I said, and the mayor made a great clarification, it can be postponed until the July meeting with the thought that staff move forward with the applicant and try to negotiate some kind of a resolution to this issue, and then hear it then, or move forward now. 6 to 1, half a dozen. You're all.
Hey, Jack, as far as that negotiation, I mean, is there any potential flexibility on that asphalt, or even just, with the sidewalk? I mean, is there just maybe a sidewalk requirement and less input on the asphalt, or just some other way? I mean, is that something the city can be flexible with based on codes?
Ultimately, the code has certain standards as to what we're supposed to require. Like I said, if we had known about this up front, we would have resolved it up front, but we don't. I think the way we can do those things, for example, on 188th Street, they're only doing a 4-inch asphalt overlay because there's an existing bed of 4 inches of asphalt. So they got to do their curb, gutter, sidewalk, and 4-inch overlay on it. We don't have the same scenario with Main Street. That's why it requires it. And as Trudy had mentioned, it's offset. The road's offset. At best estimate, I'm not a surveyor, but I've got feet, and I stepped off it looks like the road is about 5 feet out of center off that right of way, off to the east. So, that would be one of the ways to address some of those stormwater concerns. But I think the best scenario would be a function of timing, when something would be triggered, that kind of scenario, versus we don't want that. From a staff perspective, no, we don't really have that authority. We can recommend that it time out over different triggers or timeframes, a year or two or whatever. But the only entity that has the authority to waive its own requirements is the Board of Aldermen. So
Okay. So what I'm hearing then is what can be compromised.
Well, what
It's-
ran the actions of this commission is a table, a postpone, or a vote yes or no. So everything else is outside of their purview, I guess. So
Okay.
and Carmen, you could make the motion. If you get a second, there's got to be a vote on it either way on the table.
yeah,
Or postpone.
table, postpone, or we
Okay.
just based on the motion that's on the table.
I'd like to ask another question, Mr. Mayor. I kind of understand where Carmen's coming from, because I felt a lot of tension coming through this whole thing too. And I would very much like to see an agreement come together that makes both sides happier. Is that something that you think is possible? Because I'm not an engineer, and you all know more about what's going on with this whole thing than most of us do. So we're kind of looking a little bit for some guidance here, I think, right, Carmen?
Well, I mean, in my opinion, I mean, it's not for us to decide if an agreement is possible, really. I mean, we just want to table it and give that opportunity to occur, right?
And that's it. I'm thinking there needs
So-
to be kind of an opportunity for all the parties to discuss rather than take a hard line right now.
Well, if we feel like that is relevant, then we need someone to put a motion out then to postpone this. until the next meeting.
I make a motion to postpone.
Okay,
Let's table instead of postpone, right?
Who's talking?
That was
That's
Alderman
John.
Chevalier. His suggestion to you was let's table it instead of postpone it. Postpone it means it comes back in July. Table means it's indefinitely done. It's indefinitely off the table until we can come back with an agreement.
Thank you, sir.
that's.
I move to table.
Is there a
I
second?
withdraw my original motion and move to table.
I
Is there a
second
Okay.
that table action.
Thank you,
Okay.
John.
There we are.
Is there any discussion on the table? If not,
My question kind of is what are you guys, is there anything specific that you all want to come back to for the reason that we need to table this, or?
We will talk with leaders of the foundation and let them decide how they want to move forward.
Sorry, yeah, my question is more for the commissioners.
Oh,
Is
I'm
there
sorry. I thought you
anything-
said my
is there
name.
anything you want
I
Jack
apologize.
to look into particularly on this?
Well, I mean, my thoughts, I already mentioned, if there's anything that can be, I don't know how it would be brought to the aldermen if it doesn't pass this board to begin with. But I mean, is there any possibility that aldermen can look at any changes? I mean, I don't know. I mean, whatever can be looked at, I think should be looked at.
Yeah, I think, John, one of the comments you've made before with, our sidewalk on 180th, it's kind of a sidewalk to nowhere, right? So do we get into that situation on this one if we build a sidewalk on Main Street? But
Yeah.
the stormwater, I don't disagree with stormwater improvements, but I think they've addressed that a lot. And again, that road will be impacted regardless. If you're going to have more people coming to a place, they're going to take routes. They're going to, it's a road to get there.
I'm just wondering if Mr. Weiner could go back to the association and come up with some kind of a alternative discussion, come back to the city with, and I'm not sure exactly what I want to say. I just think that butting heads here isn't going to make for happy citizenry. I was very excited to see the foundation come in because the original prints and everything, it was an elegant building. And on the north side of town, I thought that was going to be beautiful to have people coming in from St. Joe and area and see this gorgeous building going up. And I would just like to see it remain a source of pride for the city and for the Herzog Foundation to have this project. So I would ask that Mr. Weiniger go back to the foundation and see what you can do to help resolve this issue to the satisfaction of everyone and the codes.
And Deb, I will tell you this, and Kevin has mentioned it, Dirk has mentioned it, and Anthony mentioned it as well. I think the only way that we can come to an agreement is really with more time. They were surprised by our recommendation coming out. They weren't fully prepared for it. These three gentlemen had to pass it up to other folks. So, you know, we came forward with here's where we are. Oh, wait a minute. There was back and forth. So ultimately, the only opportunity we have to do that is time. If we don't have time, we can't get it.
And
Well, if that's the case, then
that we're sensing here is that source of tension from a feeling of perhaps being blindsided.
Well, with time, we should be able to resolve that. So let's.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that this is an indication from what Jack just said that postponing this is a good idea. So
No,
we need to have
tabling it is a good idea.
Table it. Right. Excuse me. I misspoke. All right. So I suppose we need a vote then, Brandy?
Yep. Mayor Boley,
Aye.
Deb,
Aye.
Carmen,
Aye.
Alderman Chevalier.
Aye for the action of tabling.
Yep. And Rand,
Aye.
5-0.
Okay.
We will make contact with Gassinger Walker folks tomorrow, and hopefully we can start down a road to come up with something.
Excellent.
Time is the only way that's going to be able to give us the opportunity to do something. So we'll see where that goes.
I think we're on the right track. All right.
And hey, Trudy, I just want to thank you for your comments as well.
Yes,
I appreciate that.
Thank you for letting me speak. I appreciate your consideration.
Thanks, Trudy.
Glad to have you here. And thank you for all of you for being here. At
Thank
this point,
you.
let's get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no.
None.
You're adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
sir.